Good morning, friends. Adab, Sat Sri Akal and Namaskar. This is in continuation. This is my 180th video on Jullunder Cantonment. Some years back, I was shared with these documents by Mr. Narinder Sayal and some officers who are supportive to the idea of how cantonments were formed. So these documents which are in my hand need to be spoken on, that how the Britishers claim that they acquired, or in any of the three formats which they admit, lands in Jullunder Cantonment. So this officer was deputed in 1971 regarding a case of bungalow number 2 and 65, which was filed in Delhi High Court. On that very pretext, he was trying to meet the KANGOO, Mr. SUNDER in the DC's office, was unable to meet him. Then he was told to meet another KANGOO called CHAMAN in the DRA branch. So finally, there is some files in the English file record. So that means there is a separate record in the DC's office, Jullunder. And he laid on these files of case number 2, survey number 117, and bungalow number 65, survey number 384. He met the PATWARI of SAMSARPUR, naming Mr. FAQUIR Chand, and another PATWARI called ROOP SINGH. They were the people who actually supported him to a lot of documents. So that's how the MO wrote letters to the DC that we need the old land records and Jamabandis of the cantonment. So there were various annexes from A, B, C, D, E, F which were filed. So this first letter of 7th November, let's say, 1916, it speaks of some area was added, that is about 21.99 acres of land was added within the cantonment boundary pillars of Jullunder. So that means Jullunder was already existing. So he is working on to this calculation in 1916 that the land cost of this 30 acres was meagerly 877, but the building which was standing, or the built up area which was standing in this part, was approximately 3200 rupees. So valuation was done, and finally, this land was acquired. Originally, Jullunder was made of 15 villages and a total land holding of 3073 acres. Now, there was a total given at one stage that Jullunder, there is a township where 4 acres were taken, Dhokha, nil, Subhana, 57 acres, Maroonvalli, 0 acres, Hullutalli, 66 acres, Sundarpura, 59 acres, Sofi Pind, 52 acres, Alidpur, 86 acres, Dheen, 77 acres, and Nering, 65 acres, Bhodewal, 644 acres, Kasurpur, 148 acres, and Gurdwan, 221 acre land. Surajpur, nil, Kudrabad, nil. So the total landholding which became at this point was 1483 acres. And he is further mentioning that some of the plots which were acquired, now this is all we are talking in a period of 1855. Now he is mentioning here that plot number 1, 2, 13, 14, 15 being the Jagirs of the Ahluwalia Rajas, it was exchanged for government land. So we took away your land and we gave you land somewhere else which was also government land. So land of the Raja now, who was the proprietor for lands in column number 1 to 4. Now, does he mean 1 to 4 Jullunder, Dokla, Subhana and Murunwala, or does he mean something else is not exhibited here? In the same para he says the Mafidars, or these may be the Pattidaris or the Zamindaris, a rank below the Rajas, have been allowed for the compensation for loss of revenue at pension rates. Now, what is this pension rates? It was an annual payment of compensation to these people, and the proprietors of these lands have received this money which was occupied by them of these two matters. Now, there was one piece of land which was occupied by Humli Khanas. I know which category is he mentioning, or is there a typographical error? Because the smallest category which is being defined by the Britishers is the Rotwari landholders. So, well, let's say. So, these three category of people were compensated. Now, if they were compensated, let's say, then what was the period when this war was fought? And it very clearly speaks of that the British troops in 1800 and I think 16 or 26 finally marched into the Sugran battle. And you read J.P. Mittal book, it says most of the lands in cantonments were through conquest. Like they won wars, and the Raja's lands are ceded to the Britishers. So then why is this Ahluwalia Raja or the Rajas in column 1 to 4 are being compensated? We need to understand 1815, 1850, what was really happening in this country, So, one Raja was given compensation, the other proprietor was given land in lieu of land. So, everything this kept going on. So, was it because the Charter Act 1773 is a question to be asked of the Queen of England, which restricted the forces of the East Indies Army to not to enter into war and try and increase the dominion of British India through war? Even after war, why did the Britishers entered into treaties with petty chiefs and Rajas? What actually transferred to the British in 1773? Was it the Diwani alone, or was it the complete sovereignty? All these questions need to be answered. In the same 1855, there is another appendix added to this report. Now here it says Jullunder was 4 acres, Dwarka was 718 acres, Subhana was 57 acres, Murunwali was 382 plus 9 acres, Hulatalli was 66 acres, Sundarpura was 59 plus 3 acres, and Sofipind was 52 acres, Alidpur was 86 acres, Dheen was 77, Niring was 65, Bodewal 644, Kasurpura was 148 plus added 5 acres, Gurdwadian was 284 acres, Surajpura 495 acres, and Kordabad 293 acres. Now, these 15 villages, when finally gave up this land, the total land holding turned out to be 3073 acres. So, what was acquired when it was 1483? Was it minus the 3000, or was it 14,000 added the 3000? So, the claim in 1855 or 1826 is slightly different. Now, if we go by another data given in this very research book, it speaks that many army officers had built up bungalows or estates in Jullunder cantonment much prior to this acquisition. The report of the DC talks of 1855. But the Major Deccan built his bungalow on 25th September 1859, which was later called bungalow number 63. Where is it mentioned? It is mentioned on the report page number 73. Now, Captain Smith built his bungalow on 18th April 1851. This is bungalow number 4. Where is it speaking? Again, page number 3 of the 1930 or 1846 report. Now, Major General J. Lilta, the man who built Jullunder, created his bungalow on 21st June 1849. This is bungalow number 72. Report is again added on page number 70 of 1846. So, going by this thought that 1849 already there were people sitting on these bungalows. So, did this Lieutenant General or Brigadier or Colonel or whoever, Captain Smith, who actually moved in and who gave them these bungalow numbers, did they originally buy the grants from the proprietors or the Rajas, or was it acquired and then they bought it? Is a matter of question. It says, as I have above, Brigadier Wheeler was the first to occupy Jullunder, and therefore one finds that the site of bungalow number 1, which is now being used as a cavalry mess in 1929, was granted for building a house which passed through his hands to various Englishmen, finally came in possession of Rai Bahadur Melaram of Lahore in 1872. So that means after 1872 it was resumed. Similarly, bungalow number 2, which was originally said to be granted on 18th August 1848, prior to even Major General J. Jitta. So what is really happening? So and then he sells it in 1848 to Major Palmer, who was the present officer on the Battle of Sobran on 10th February 1846. So that means when there was war, the officers had already put their foot in these cantonments. So that's now bungalow number 3 again comes down to the date of 20th January 1848, was given to Surgeon J. Brown, who after sold it to Colonel Legard on 2nd July 1850. So guys, there is something which is missing. Why these officers bought these properties and how these properties then came after 1857 Gadar within the cantonment boundary pillars. That's the matter of question. So, acquisition was not done, but the ownership had transferred to these officers of various bungalows. So, were the boundary pillars of the cantonments made when Lieutenant General Jitta or Brigadier Wheeler was holding these bungalows? I don't know. And the first notification of Jullunder boundary pillars by the 3rd Lahore Division Punjab government was done by number 2851, dated 19th October 1868. So that means till 1868 there was no boundaries of the Jullunder cantonment. Now the report says of 1916 that had added 30 acres were taken in. What was that area? Again 1 to 38, which were original boundary pillars of 1868. The boundary pillars rose from 1 to 38 to 1 to 41 because of this 30 acres. And there was another notification of 3rd Lahore Division Punjab government, notified number 284, dated 31st August 1908. So you have two notifications, one which is holding 1 to 38 boundary pillars and the other of 1908 which holds boundary pillars 1 to 41. So we need to lay hands on this survey plans, dig into them, go to the DRO branch, That's the district revenue officer, an officer above the Tahsildar, below the SDM. He's the man who's holding all these 15 villages plans, khasra numbers. These are called gatthas. These are plans made on kapda, kind of a linen cloth. मलमल का कपड़ा जिसको बोलते हैं. इनको निकालो. जब आप ये निकालेंगे so you will see there were boundary pillars marked on this pillar. Every village must be holding some boundary pillars. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 6, 7, 8. Like 15 villages, 38 pillars. So every village cannot have one pillar. Every village has 2 pillars. So comes to 30. So what are those 6 pillars extra? Maybe those are diagonalities somewhere in the longitudes and the latitudes. So dig in this record, friends, of Jullunder, and that will show what are the boundaries of Jullunder. Now he says in his report of 1929 that every boundary pillar from 1 to 41 or the 38 ones are quite satisfactory. That means boundary pillars are standing. They are almost in all cases visible. From one to another pillar, there are practically no encroachments on in cantonments, either from inside or from outside, except for a minor in 2 cases. Now he is talking of bungalow pillar number 11. Now where is this pillar? This pillar is a part of the village called Sufi Pind. Now here one Mr. Girdhar Lal, who was originally holding a plot and paying a rent also of 1 rupee to the then cantonment magistrate, was actually holding land A. Now till 1925 no classification of lands were there, but because this report was made in 1929, so he says this was class A lands. But what was prior? So pillar number 11 he is talking. Now village of SAMSARPUR have made small encroachments on pillar number 16, 17 and 18. So that means this village is holding 3 pillars. Similarly, the village of Subhana, which is holding pillar number 25 and 26. Again we have a detail that these 4 villages which he is mentioned, or 3, he is mentioned their pillar numbers. So the other 3 pillars or the other 17, 18 pillars can be located. So please find these. So pillars are quite eligible, they talk of it. Now he says in 1929, already after an acquisition of 30 acres added on, there was a King George Royal Indian Military School, which was needed to be included within the cantonment boundary pillars, and the publication and modification has been requested by the government. So that means after 1929, a 3rd boundary pillar or a notification also was required. Now where is this school? King George Royal Indian Military School. Find it. Pillars have been erected to demarcate all A lands. Now this is very important. 1929 he says A, B, C lands were marked on pillars. So please, Captain Muhammad Azim, who was the special land officer, clearly is talking of all this in his reports. Now this Captain Muhammad Azim, who was the special land officer in 1929 and was asked to make not a record of right, he is giving a beautiful statement. He says Jullunder Cant has not been declared a separate state under section 3(1)(c) of Act 17 of 1887, and no measurement of its area was done during the last settlement. So then guys, what was being acquired and from whom? How do you define Mr. A or Aluwalia Raja or the Mufidaris or the original proprietors or the tillers, whose land, how much area? You were just saying we took 3,075 acres of land. Where? From whom? What was my share? What was his share? What was his share? From those villages of 15. So please, guys, hold up. I'm honestly telling you, 1843, the entire Jamabandi, the gatthas of my villages which were acquired at that time, The 1 to 36 boundary pillars of Ambala cantonment are with me along with Vazibulars of Ambala. Why can't you people do it? You people are so lazy. Now this video is going to be only watched by Jullunder people. Belgaum people will sleep over it. Agra people will even play more smarter. And sorry to use this word, Secunderabad cantonment though is out of the world. It was never a part of the country India. Whether it was British India, whether it is now India. So Secunderabad bungalow owners though are on top of the world. I don't know which fancy letter they are moving on. Coming video is going to be about them only. So dig into these records. Sit down with the DC. Take this report. Last time when I was in Jullunder, Rohit got this entire setup photocopied. Have you read this? Journal Saab, please, I am requesting Brigadier Dhillon. So this report is talking of some dates. The report was claimed to be made on 28th Jan 1846. Now let's read what he writes in 1846. This is very important. Introductory and journal. He says, I was made to reach this Captain Niaz on 4th May 1929 with the orders to proceed for the preparation of the GLR. So that means till 1929 there was no GLR made for Jullunder cantonment. The land administration rules in 1925. My first step was to secure suitable office accommodation and require staff which required during the week of my area at the station. But before proceedings with the points I have come across while preparing journal and register, which generally affects the question of lands in cantonment, I consider necessary to go back over a century to give my small account as to how, under what circumstances Jullunder was occupied by the Britishers. After the defeat of Firozpur, the Sikh retreated hastily across the Satluj. Sir Hugh encamped a Sultan Kanwala, being not in a position to assume the offer, decisive until reinforced with fresh troops, guns and ammunition. Practically all the ammunition had been expended and the troops were exhausted. The Sikhs gathered fresh courage from the enforced inactions of the British army. They brought up reinforcements of guns and men from Lahore, and early in January 1846 showed signs of renewed aggression, making predatory incursions to the directions of Ludhiana and thus threatening the British line of communication. British troops also hurried the scenes of action. Ludhiana was further reinforced by the Sirmur and the Nazari battalions of the Gorkhas. The 30th Native Infantry and the Regiment of Cavalry under Brigadier Godley, Sir Harry Smith, had the supreme command of these forces. Sir Hogg Gog, the commanding-in-chief, was away to Firozpur. The fight kept going till 1846. Now, after a small battle, he says, of Aliwal, the Sikhs on 28th January 1846 were defeated, leaving Brigadier Wheeler to command the troops on Upper Satluj. Now, what would be the Upper Satluj? Sir Harry Smith marched on 3rd February 1846. On his way, he was joined by the Commander-in-Chief. The final battle, which shattered the Sikh power south of Lahore to pieces, was fought at Sobran, 19th February 1846, as a result of which Maharaja Dalip Singh made his submission at the British camp at Laliana, from where he accompanied the Governor-General to Lahore. Now, a minor is taking 1846 or 1846, yes, Maharaja Ranjit Singh was no more. After this defeat, Brigadier Wheeler crossed the river in pursuit of the Sikhs and advanced to Philor and occupied the fort, the key of which had been made over to him by the Chaudhry Qutbuddin, who was maybe the petty chief of that area. So the whole of Jullunder and Doab region was annexed and formed a commissionerate by Sir John Lawrence, later called Lawrence. So the first cantonments which came up in 1846 were Jullunder, Philor, Nakodar and Kartarpur. They abandoned all the others and kept the first, that is Jullunder, which is now we are talking of. Now he is giving a report on acquisition. So he clearly says there is no records available with the cantonment authority to show whether lands in Jullunder cantonments were ever acquired. I only went through the files of the Deputy Commissioner, Jullunder office, and those files gave me the vision and opinion that these files were in the English records and not destroyed and were kept safe. So that means till 1929 these files were in record. Now file number 47/1, compensation of lands 1849 to 1862. File number 23/7, inclusion of boundaries of Jullunder cantonment. File number 68A, acquisition of land for rifle range. File number 27 is talking of cantonment land. So we have these files. We have all the right to call these files in the court. We have all the rights to verify these files with the DC. Why can't we approach the DC or the MLA of our cantonment? So this entire record will come to you. A perusal of the above files clearly said that Jullunder, when was being made, all lands were properly acquired. Under which Land Acquisition Act in 1846? Okay, let's ask this question. How many people know that there was no Land Acquisition Act prior to 1894? So which act was the British Army acquiring land? Was it a Governor General order? Or was it an ordinance? Because 1773 Charter said that now the Governor General will make regulations and those regulations will behave like a law in force and would be encouraged in the society or in the area for what or where the law has been, the Governor General regulation. So some Governor General regulations were made for army cantonments, some Governor General regulations were made for outside the cantonment. Was it like this? No, nothing of those sort. It was only the hierarchy which used to talk of it. Governor General orders used to be one, and then they used to go to either the military or department or to the state department. These were the two pillars of the government then. That's all. Now, in the earliest part of 1868, an area of Jullunder encamped acres of how many lands? 3,475 acres. So now there is a discrepancy. The actual land which was 3,043, what I just mentioned in the above. Now how did they get this added on lands? Now if we even add up 1,000 of the land which I gave in the earlier data, it becomes somewhere about 4,000 something. He says the actual land which was available on 1915 as the survey plan, it was coming to 3,593.38 acres. So how come land has increased? So now he is saying maybe there is a little difference and error in the measurement. There is a statement which he mentions. Now he talks of through war what land was taken. That is 3,102 acres. That means the Raja of Jullunder or the Ahluwalia's Rajas were holding this much land. Land in exchange by the Deputy Commissioner in 1855 was approximately 382. Fine. Lands acquired in 1907 for rifle range and what all, he talks of 71 acres. Land which was included in 1916, what I just mentioned, that was about 29 point some acres. Now he is talking of 21.3 acres. So the total comes out to 3,577 acres. Now there is a difference of about, which he admits is 16 acres of land. So this may be a technical error and he overgives it. This was the approach because nobody could speak in front of the British. We were slaves. We were called the natives of our own country. Why doesn't our system, judiciary, the officers sitting on chair understand? Britishers were never interested in acquiring lands of ours. Well, we'll talk of this later. To conclude this report, I'll just give you a reference which came into this. There is a mosque and a burial in Jullunder Cantonment. I have not seen it in the last 10 years and nobody actually showed me also, which was owned by the Mohammedans. And these people actually showed this officer, Captain Muhammad Abeen, no, whatever it is, कि we have been paying a word called takya or remuneration for this land since long, and the land records of 1930, revenue land records. So that means these records are there, are showing that this mosque is owned by these Mohammedans and the burial place. So guys, please rush. Go seize the office of the DC, DRO and everybody. Don't everybody jumble up and don't move out from the DC's office till he doesn't show you all these papers and records. These file numbers of 1846, 1868, 1900. Send a team to the Survey of India office, Dehradun. Dig these 3 maps. And everything is done. What else is left? We don't need to do anything. We are in a very good position in Jullunder. Rest, I've been always saying, we are old grants. We were never converted into new grants. Here there is a lot of evidence which proves we were old grants, never converted into new grants. It is only if you take permission on a presumption it is admitted, because we fell in the cantonment boundaries or the military boundaries, which were the MBPs and the cantonment boundary pillars. We were asked in 1925 start giving an admission deed that we are grants under Governor General order. Thank you. Good day.